Hey guys, it's Spiffy Guy. I'm out here with another episode of Around the Home, and this time we're putting in irrigation for my raised beds. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so let's talk a little bit about this. What my plan is to put drip irrigation in on all of my plants. So I have multiple zones here. I have one raised bed, two raised bed, three over there. I've got those containers over there. I've got the garden barrel here, and I'm going to be putting in a strawberry barrel here. I also have this little area right here where I have some planters where it might be nice to put in some. So how am I going to do this? Well, my plan is to use 3/4 inch PVC. Essentially, we're going to hardline out to each one of these zones, and then we will convert from the 3/4 inch PVC into a half line poly tube, and I'll go over all the materials here as we go along. Okay, so where are we starting this? All right, we're going to start this right up here. Now you see I got a lot going on. I got a gas main, but I got my water spigot. Okay, so I've got some materials that we're going to put in there. And when we put it in, I'll let you know. That's going to be the timer, a filter, pressure regulator, that sort of thing. We're going to have hardline PVC, and we're going to drop it down into the ground. Now I'm not going very deep at all. Okay, the idea is just to get it enough below the dirt so you don't see it. I've got a gas line here, and so that brings up the point of being very careful if you're digging for this stuff where you're digging. You don't want to rupture that gas line. So if you need to, go ahead and contact, whatever your local utility marking services before you dig in here. I know that I'm not going super deep, and I know where this gas line is, so I'm not going to have an issue. Also keep in mind, like, I've got termite protection right here. So as we come off the wall over to each bed, you want to keep that in mind. So I'll do that over here on this side, that way I don't interfere with this. So let's get to it. The first thing I got to do is start digging trenches to put this line out. All right, so making a little progress here, just show you what I'm talking about, is we're just basically burying the pipe just so it's underneath the grass. The idea is that, one, I don't have to see it, two, I don't have to trip over it. This is not freeze proof, okay? I mean, if I need to freeze proof this, I gotta go down like a couple feet to get below the frost line. So I've got something in place for that. So anyway, we're gonna run it along here. We're coming out to the long bed here, so we're just gonna put a right angle on that. We're just gonna run PVC right into the hole here, okay? And then I'll come out on the other side. I'm going to right angle and come up above the dirt line, okay? A little bit above the dirt line, okay? So to make this a little bit better to winter proof, okay? Because I'm not pulling the pipes out in the winter. I'm going to use one of these. This is called a union, okay? So I got one end that's going to glue onto the pipe that comes out of here, out of this hole, right? And so then I can glue it to where it'll sit right here like that, nice. This end will glue to this pipe right here. And this actually unscrews, okay, and this whole piece can come apart. And the idea is that I can break this connection right here. That'll drain all the water out of this. It'll drain all the water out of that, and that'll be a way to kind of winterize this when I'm done. That way the water won't be in the pipes and freeze. This will be just barely below the surface that I could just kind of dig it up with hand, by my hand, or I could always just put some just a rock over it, kind of over the hole, just kind of keep it keep it from falling in and stuff. So then over here, when I'm going into the other bed, I'm just going to put a T right there, and then I'll do the same thing right there as well, okay? And then I'll have a union there as well, and that way I can break that section. So I don't think I'll have a whole lot of water left in there. I'm just using a paddle bit to drill a hole, and if you're going to be doing a lot of cutting with this PVC here, why don't you get yourself one of these nice PVC cutters. It's just a little ratchet deal. It beats having to get the saw out. Alright, so to give you an idea of what we got, we've glued all these joints. So we've got the right angle, we've got the union. In case you don't know, this union comes in 3 parts. So that'll line up there, and then this will come up and screw in. And that'll give us our joint, or we can kind of drop it there. Now on the other side, I still need to tack it up here, but got the right angle at the bottom, a little length of pipe with some sloppy glue work, and now this is a ball valve, and we have a tiny little piece of pipe in here, and then this is a junction that has a female threaded 3/4, and then this is a converter from 3/4 threaded into the the 1/2-inch poly. So now I'll run a poly header pipe all the way up along here, and then at each one of my my rows I'll put a T-junction, and then we'll run 1/2-inch poly out like that, and that way we can adjust exactly, you know, where it's gonna sit. And so we'll just run the one pipe up. Now, one thing I need to get is I am gonna get a couple little tacks just to keep this from moving. Okay, and I needed to come in underneath my my fence posts. You can see the little rabbit fencing I got here. So I needed to make sure that I came in underneath that. And so then what this will allow me to do is having the ball valve on there will allow me to adjust the flow to this bed. This is pretty nice, and I got this idea from Growing Your Heirlooms. He's got a video on his irrigation system, and I kind of took a lot from that and then went from here. This is an expensive part though. This is like a $3 or $4 part. The unions themselves are like a $3 or $4 part, so you can up your cost if you put those in. So just keep that in mind. You know, once again, all of this is going to depend upon what your layout is and how you want to go about doing it. This is just what I kind of came up with. So I need to do that again for this bed over here, and then I forgot that I was going to add in another piece here. So what I'll do is I'll cut here, put another T, and just kind of run it in next to this next to the air conditioning pad, and that way I can drop 1/2-inch poly wherever I want. And I can always use an emitter off that 1/2-inch poly and convert it to 1/4 inch and put like a little spray sprinkler in there and little drips in there. So there's a lot of versatility here, and you can make it work to whatever you want. All right, so we're moving right along. You may have remembered this bed from last year. I was going to put in some mint and stuff like that. So I think part of the problem was, despite being pretty much in mostly shade all day long because of these trees right here, I don't think I was getting watered enough. So I decided to add on, you know, project creep, whatever you want to call it. So I decided to come underneath the fence and put a nozzle there. If I never use it, that's fine, but I'd rather have it there than not need it and try to plumb it in later. So let me show you what I'm going to do to get this plumbed in. All right, so here's the spigot right here underneath this little winterized thing. We're still in winter technically, but we're gonna come out here, we're gonna have our filter and our timer and all that stuff, and we're gonna bring it over to here, okay? And I'm gonna run a PVC line down there, and I'll put a union here, and that way we can screw a piece of PVC on there and then join it up here rather than trying to get it exactly to match up, and I'll show you that in a bit. So once that pipe comes down here, it's going to connect into here, okay, and then this pipe is going to roll down there and feed those two beds and the container area. So I was originally just going to put a 45 and then another right angle, and that will run down here and feed out the rest of the beds. But because I want to put in that front bed, I decided I could plumb a T in there right now, and then I'll shoot over there. And that way, like I said, if I don't need the line, I can cap the line, but at least it's there. That's kind of the point right there. So I'm going to kind of move this around, and then we'll get that fitted in. All right, so here's the final product. You can see I still need to run that line down there, but a couple right angles, straight up, put a ball valve here, we can turn it on and off. This will convert into our 1/2-inch poly pipe, and this connection right here, I just used like 1.5 inches of the 3/4 inch, put it in there. Just be careful when you glue that you don't glue these ball valves shut. So the next thing I'm going to do is, because I have a fence line, I'm going to run it down here, and then I'll come back behind this fence right here, and I'll just trench that out just shallowly, and then I'll come up here. This is going to be a pain right there. I've got a right angle. I got to figure out how to do that. It's just, it all is really kind of make up as you go along. It really all depends on what your setup is. But the hardest part right now is getting all this hard line run, and the fact that I have such a large area that I'm trying to run to and such an odd shape. So we're just keeping on. All right, so as we come around to this back fence bed, you can see I've got a, once again, got a ball valve plumbed in. I have this at a little bit of an angle, so once that 1/2 inch poly comes out, where's my finger? There it is. comes out there, I can run it pretty much straight down, and I'll be able to spread the whole way with just one line going all the way down there. Now I put a union in right here, so when I disconnect that for the winter, this whole section all the way from up by the spigot all the way down here will drain out, and that way I don't have to worry about water freezing in the pipes and that sort of thing. The trick though is that this corner right here is not a 90-degree angle, but I needed a 90-degree angle right there. So I managed to get that 90-degree on, and I figured out the distance that I needed between the union and the 90-degree, and I glued that on the other side of the fence, and then I slid that underneath. I had to dig just a tiny bit just to slide it underneath the fence, but the union wasn't quite lining up, and so I used my heat gun. I've got this little Wanger heat gun here. You can buy this at Home Depot. It's about 35 bucks. I bought this for the garden barrel. And once again, here we go. We buy tools for our jobs. We can use them later. So good investments there. And I was able to heat this up very carefully and then bend it. So now this union is straight on right here. And I have a unique bend that goes to a 90. And that'll run along my fence line. All right, guys. It's another brisk morning out here. We're continuing on. This is definitely a multi-day project unless you got like a really good weekend. I do it, 30, 40 minutes at a time. You can see this kale. This one, we had a hard freeze last night. Dwarf Siberian kale. This stuff is awesome. Put it in your garden and grow it. It's nutrient dense. Super crazy. All right, so you can see I got the one garden barrel plumbed here with the ball valve at the right angle, and then we'll go to poly tube there. And I had to put a 45 right here, and so now this spot is going to be the next garden barrel, which is right there and not built yet. But I went ahead and excavated out, and we'll talk about that in another video. But once again, I did the same standard thing, popping up ball valve, right angle. You can make this shorter if you don't want it to come up that far out of the ground. Once again, with the hardline, you can customize to whatever your growing scenario is. I've got a lot of different areas, about 100 plus square feet of gardening area, in this little backyard here, and I'm trying to cram as much as possible in here. So what I'm doing right now is going to be definitely slightly different than what you're going to need to do, but the principles are going to be the same. So once again, we got a T here, and you can see that I've got this little screw adapter. I'll bring you in close. And what that is that's expandability right there. I'm fairly certain that this will be the last garden barrel that I'm going to put in right here, but should I desire to put another one in and continue down the fence line, or perhaps we've talked about this tree has some issues, possibly taking it out and putting like an apple tree or something which would allow us to move it over a little bit away from the fence. So if we wanted to do that and I wanted to plumb in more line, I can. I don't have to worry about just a straight end cap and having to splice a line in there. I just unscrew that, I screw on a new piece, and I'm ready to roll on to the next piece. Okay, one point of note to leave out here is that with things like the screw end caps and things like that, make sure to leave them uncovered until you have tested the system. That way if there's a leak or anything and you need to put some Teflon tape on there or tighten it up with a wrench, you can go ahead and do that. I covered up a lot of the fittings on mine. I'm fairly certain that they're glued well. That was probably a mistake. But it is what it is. We'll figure it out as we go. So that's pretty much about it for the hard line. Okay, so once again, it's really simple. It's just straight PVC, cut and measure and put it in. One thing I will say is make sure to pick up a little bit extra fittings than you think you need. Those contractor packs are great because if you only need like 6 or 7, having 10 just in case is great. I had to run a couple times back to Home Depot and get some 45s because I needed a 45 here, I needed a couple extra over there, and I hadn't planned on that. So pick up a couple extra 45s, save your receipt, you can always return it, and they're super cheap. They're only like 40 cents a piece. So there you go. If you have any questions, let me know. We're going to continue on with the poly tubing, and then we'll talk about the emitters as well as the timer and all the hose stuff that goes up on the hose bib on there that will actually feed the whole system. So questions, comments, go ahead and stick them below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends. It's all about passing along things that work for other people. I want to encourage everybody to get out there and grow their food because we used to do that back in the day and life was a lot better back then, and having control over your own food is super important. So just remember that life's an adventure. Go out and have one. You can see I've got the ball valve like once again and the right angle, and we'll bring our motorcycle big truck. Oh my goodness.